Now, of course, we'll be bringing you all the details on that and other from West Asia. We'll begin with Speed News now. U.S. President Donald Trump has declared that the war in Gaza is over ahead of a high-stakes visit to West Asia. The announcement comes as the release of 20 Israeli hostages believed to be alive in Gaza is expected to be returned on Monday. Traveling with President Trump are key U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe. Speaking to the reporters, Trump dismissed concerns over the ceasefire's durability. He praised Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Qatar for their roles in mediation. Netanyahu called the anticipated hostage release a potential moment of unity. Hundreds gather at Hostages Square in Tel Aviv to celebrate the expected return of those held captive in Gaza. The crowd is carrying flags and posters with pictures of hostages. Meanwhile, reports say that families are on their way to the Gaza border to be reunited with their loved ones. Families who live far from the southern Israel have received messages to begin making their way to Iran based on the Gaza border ahead of the expected releases. Ukraine is making strong efforts to repel Russia's ground offensive as fighting continues. Both sides are engaging in ongoing airstrikes. Late Saturday, a Ukrainian drone attack set fire to a shopping center in Russian-controlled Donetsk. The Russian military reported shooting down at least 37 Ukrainian drones across several Russian regions on Sunday evening, adding to the 72 drones downed the previous day. President Donald Trump has indicated that the United States may consider providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles, a significant increase in military support, and that is if Russia does not move towards ending the war. Trump has revealed that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had requested the advanced weaponry in recent talks. Tomahawk cruise missiles offer long-range precision strike capabilities and, if delivered, would mark a notable shift in U.S. policy towards the conflict. The White House is considering the possible use of the Insurrection Act, a centuries-old law that permits the deployment of U.S. military forces on domestic soil under specific conditions. Vice President J.D. Vance confirmed that the president is reviewing all options, citing rising crime and safety concerns in major cities. The move faces legal hurdles, with courts recently blocking troop deployment in Illinois and Oregon, calling the justification insufficient. France's newly reappointed Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has unveiled his cabinet on Sunday, keeping most key positions unchanged, despite pledging renewal and diversity. Roland Lescure remains Finance Minister as the government prepares to present a crucial budget to a divided parliament. Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot and Justice Minister Gerald Darmanin retain their posts as well. The most notable change is the appointment of Laurent Nunez ahead of the Paris Police. That is the head of the Paris Police, as Interior Minister, replacing Bruno Retailleau, a conservative with presidential ambitions. A shooting at a bar on St. Helena Island in South Carolina has left 4 people dead and more than 20 injured. 4 of the injured remain in critical condition. Authorities say the restaurant was packed with hundreds of people at the time of the incident. The names of the victims are being withheld until families are notified. The investigation is still ongoing and officials have not released further details. Election workers in Cameroon have begun counting ballots after Sunday's presidential vote. 92-year-old incumbent Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of state, is widely expected to extend his 43-year rule. Among his main challengers is 76-year-old former government spokesperson Issa Chiroma, who has drawn large crowds and backing from opposition parties and civic groups. But with the opposition divided among 9 candidates and Biya's strong grip on state institutions, analysts predict another term for the longtime leader. Over 8 million Cameroonians registered to vote. Results are expected within 15 days. Airports across Europe have begun rolling out the EU's new entry and exit system, requiring eye scans, facial imaging, and fingerprints for all non-EU travelers. The biometric checks, which were launched on Sunday, are part of a broader EU plan to tighten border security and reduce identity fraud. Airport officials call it a historic turning point. Rome Fiumicino Airport has installed over 200 self-service kiosks, where passengers register before proceeding to border control. The system will be fully implemented across the Shenzhen area by April 2026 near Ciampino Airport, that will begin using it on October 20th. In Spain, a young far-right lawmaker and social media personality has officially launched his new anti-immigration party, further signaling Europe's political shift to the right. Alves Perez, a 35-year-old with over 1 million Instagram followers, unveiled the party's over at a PAC rally in Madrid. He has pledged sweeping deportations of criminal immigrants, cuts to foreign aid, and a referendum on Spain's EU membership if Brussels doesn't respect Spanish interests. Perez is also facing multiple legal cases, including for alleged illegal funding and harassment of former party members. Anti-government protests in Madagascar continue to escalate, with growing unrest now reaching the country's military ranks. General Demosthene Picula has been named the new army chief by members of CAPSAT, an elite military unit that has openly joined the demonstrations. President Andre Rajoelina has accused the unit of attempting a power grab after it urged fellow soldiers to defy orders and support the protest movement. What began on September 25th as youth-led protests over basic services has grown into a nationwide call for the president's resignation. According to the United Nations, at least 22 people have been killed in the clashes so far. Clashes broke out in Chile's Santiago on Sunday as protesters marking the day of encounter of 2 roles confronted police. Officers used water cannons and tear gas to disperse crowds marching through the capital. Demonstrators carried signs demanding justice for Julia Chunu, a 73-year-old environmental activist missing since November 2024. Her family believes she was killed for defending native forests in the Los Rios region. The holiday, formerly known as Day of the Race, marks the 1492 arrival of Christopher Columbus in the Americas. Clashes broke out in Ecuador's capital on Sunday as police used tear gas to disperse anti-government protesters rallying against rising diesel prices. The protests, led by the country's largest indigenous group, were sparked by the recent removal of a fuel subsidy that raised diesel prices by $1 per gallon, a major blow to sectors like farming, fishing, and transport. Authorities had prepared for unrest, deploying forces under a state of emergency that limits public gatherings in the 10 provinces, including Quito. The government says the subsidy cut is aimed at curbing fuel smuggling. So far, the protests have left one person dead, dozens injured, and over 100 detained. At least 29 people were arrested in Amsterdam after an anti-immigration protest escalated in the city center. The march, organized by the group Netherlands in Opstand, began peacefully but turned tense when demonstrators moved off the approved route, setting off fireworks and damaging property. Now, this follows a similar protest in The Hague weeks earlier that turned violent. The unrest comes just ahead of the Netherlands' snap election on October 29, triggered by the collapse of the ruling government over disputes on migration policy. The new Peruvian president, José Jerry, confronted his first protest by engaging in dialogue with Aldo Marinos, a local mayor who had marched for days to the capital, Lima, to demand more attention for his region. Aldo Marinos, mayor of Patas in northern Peru, began the march in August and was received at the government palace after arriving in the capital. Outside, supporters and Gen Z demonstrators gathered, voicing frustration over Jerry's sudden appointment following last week's impeachment of his predecessor, Dina Boluarte. The president is also under scrutiny over past allegations, including a now closed sexual assault case and claims of corruption, both of which he denies. U.S. Ambassador-designate Sergio Gore met India's Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agrawal in New Delhi. They discussed the state of economic and trade relations between the two nations. The talks come as India and the U.S. work to revive negotiations on a broader trade understanding after months of tension over tariffs and visa rules. Now, according to the U.S. Embassy, both the sides explored ways to deepen bilateral trade, increase investment, and strengthen cooperation in key strategic sectors. Fresh flooding has hit northeastern Spain, with parts of Catalonia placed under a red alert for torrential rain. In the coastal city of La Rapita, dramatic footage shows muddy torrents tearing through streets, sweeping away cars and debris. The heavy rainfall has overwhelmed drainage systems and sparked emergency responses across the region. Authorities are urging residents to stay indoors and avoid travel as more rain is expected in the coming hours. Severe flooding has devastated the town of Alamo in Mexico's Veracruz state following days of relentless heavy rain. Several areas remain submerged and damage is widespread, but much-needed aid has now arrived from government agencies, offering relief to affected residents. A powerful nor'easter is pounding the U.S. East Coast, prompting states of emergency in New Jersey and parts of New York. Farther south, heavy rain and flooding have hit the Carolinas, with the roads submerged and emergency rescues underway. In South Carolina's Georgetown County, several drivers were pulled from flooded cars after nearly 7 inches of rain fell. Meanwhile, in North Carolina's Outer Banks, ocean overwash is spilling onto Highway 12 as high tide approaches. And then across the continent, remnants of Typhoon Halong slammed western Alaska with hurricane-force winds and devastating coastal flooding, pushing homes off their foundation. Drivers in India's Bengaluru can now see live traffic signal countdowns right inside an app called Mapless. A first for any Indian city, drivers can now see exactly how many seconds remain before a signal turns red or green, helping commuters make quicker, safer decisions on the road. Now, the feature is part of a new collaboration between the Bengaluru Traffic Police, Arcadis India, a consultancy firm, and Mapless tech team. The feature is already live across select intersections in the city, which is notorious for its traffic congestion. If this pilot succeeds, the live countdown feature could soon expand to other metros, potentially changing how India navigates cities in real time. X is stepping up its fight against spam. The platform says it has removed around 1.7 million bots that were cluttering up users' replies with spam and junk comments. Head of product Nikita Beer posted on X saying that users should start seeing fewer spam replies in the coming days, and that the company's next target is DM spam. X did not share details on how these bots were detected, but it's reportedly using automated and behavioral analysis tools to flag suspicious accounts. This is one of the biggest cleanups since Elon Musk took over. The move comes amidst a rise in fake and spam accounts on the platform. U.S. semiconductor manufacturer Qualcomm has admitted to failing to inform Chinese authorities over its acquisition of Israel's Autotalks in June. The admission comes 2 days after China launched an antitrust investigation into Qualcomm for failing to notify regulators before compelling its acquisition of Autotalks. Beijing's market regulator SAMR said it had warned Qualcomm in March that the deal required approval, but the company went ahead with the transaction in June without notification. The probe comes amid rising U.S.-China trade tensions, with Qualcomm shares dropping over 5% after President Donald Trump threatened new tariffs and hinted at canceling talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Oil prices rebounded more than 1% on Monday, recovering slightly after steep losses last week, sparked by renewed U.S.-China trade tensions. Brent crude rose to around $63.77 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate gained to $59.94. The recovery came as traders looked for signs of diplomatic engagement between Washington and Beijing, following turbulent week of tariff threats and export restrictions. Analysts said broader geopolitical risks and slowing global demand continue to weigh on the outlook, keeping volatility elevated across energy markets. Chinese shares tumbled on Monday, shaken by renewed U.S.-China trade tensions that threatened to derail months of gains. The CSI 300 and Shanghai Composite slipped around 2%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell over 2%. Some strategic sectors like semiconductors and rare earths held up modestly, bolstered by expectations of policy support from Beijing. The Korea Composite Stock Price Index tumbles nearly 1%. Japan is closed for a public holiday.